Have you ever wondered what would happen if the United States military went to war against the Imperial Guardsmen of the Imperium of Man? Yeah, probably not. But what the hell? Let's get into it. But first, let's get a few things out of the way real quick, or else it's gonna get real messy really fucking fast. In this video, we're going with modern United States military, post-Iraq and post-Afghanistan. Also, we're gonna be talking exclusively about Imperial Guardsmen. No orbital exterminatus, no Titans, and definitely no Space Marines. The war will take place on Earth-like terrain and conditions, and both sides can't have prior intel about the other side, but can observe and adapt. This isn't just about who has the flashiest guns and military tech, or who has the biggest battalions. It's a question of what happens when a military that treats soldiers as assets collides with a military that treats them as ammo. And the thing is, both sides would be absolutely unprepared for the way the other fights. Let's start with the US military. To really understand why it operates the way it does today, you can't just rattle off a list of gear. You gotta dig into the scar and the failures that shaped it. Think about Vietnam. That war was a brutal wake-up call. The US rolled in with overwhelming firepower, B-52 bombers carpeting jungles, and artillery barrages that could level mountains. But it didn't matter. The Viet Cong and North Vietnamese didn't play by the rules. They hit and ran, shot from treetops, hid in tunnels, blended into villages, and turned the population against the invaders. Superior tech was useless if you couldn't win hearts and minds, and wars drag on forever when the enemy fights asymmetrically. At the end of the day, the US learned that body counts alone don't equal victory, and that lesson cost them dearly. Over 58,000 died. The nation divided, and the US military left Vietnam in shame. Fast forward to the Gulf War in 1991. Operation Desert Storm showed what overwhelming conventional power could achieve when the objectives were limited and clear. A massive air campaign established total air superiority. Stealth bombers and cruise missiles shredded Iraqi command and control, and GPS-guided precision weapons devastated armored forces, all before the ground offensive even began. The result was a lightning-fast victory. Iraqi forces were routed, and Kuwait was liberated in just 100 hours of ground combat, with remarkably low coalition casualties. This validated the post-Vietnam reforms and proved that high-tech conventional warfare could deliver decisive results against a traditional army. The trouble came later, in the very different wars of the 2000s. In both the 2003 invasion of Iraq and the initial phase in Afghanistan, the US applied similar lessons from 1991. Rapid air dominance, precision strikes, and special forces working with local allies to topple regimes. Saddam was gone in weeks, and the Taliban were routed in months. Initial conventional victories were swift and impressive, but shock and awe doesn't exactly work every time. Holding territory, building the nations, and defeating insurgencies, that's where things fell apart. IEDs spawned on roadsides, suicide bombers hid in markets and ambushed American forces, insurgents struck and melted away only to reappear elsewhere. The enemy refused to fight the kind of war America's tech edge was built for. October 1993's Battle of Mogadishu, forever known as Black Hawk Down, was another brutal reality check. Elite US forces, Rangers and Delta Force, launched a daylight raid to snag Mohammed Aidid's lieutenants. But it went sideways. RPGs downed 2 Black Hawks, turning a quick op into a 15-hour urban nightmare. Outnumbered 10-1, Americans fought block by block against swarms of fighters, using civilians as shields, using roadblocks, and using human wave tactics. 18 US troops were killed, 73 were heavily wounded, and hundreds of Somalis died as a result of the battle. Graphic images of dead soldiers dragged through streets shocked America and shattered political will. Nowadays, US soldiers aren't just trigger pullers. They're highly specialized cogs in the war machine. They're trained to operate as a node in a network, constantly pass information up and down the chain, call for fires, drones, air support, and medevac, integrate with armor, artillery, artillery, cyber, and air assets, adapt to chaos, and above all, avoid throwing lives away. Casualty aversion is baked in. Every loss is a headline, a congressional hearing, a hit to morale. It's warfare with a conscience, or at least with voters in mind. And this mindset is gonna clash hard with that of the Imperial Guardsmen. Now let's talk about the other side. These guys aren't your polished professionals with retirement plans and therapy sessions. The Astra Militarum is the Imperium's vast, sprawling immune response, a tidal wave of humanity thrown at whatever Xenos or heretic horror threatens the Imperium of man. Their training comes from surviving the unspeakable. Aliens, mutants, heretics, alien mutants, mutant heretics. Imagine facing enemies that outnumber you 1,000 to 1, that regenerate, corrupt, or just keep charging no matter how many you gun down. That's the Guards' daily bread. They don't fight to rack up clean wins or minimize body bags, hell no. Their doctrine is all about endurance, buying time for the big guns like the Space Marines to arrive. Or in this case, just holding the line until the enemy chokes on its own dead. For the Guardsmen, casualties are inevitable, expected even. Retreat is heresy, punishable by a commissar's bolt to the face. Morale doesn't come from pep talks or survival stats, it's forged in faith, the unshakable belief that dying for the Emperor is the ultimate glory. Contrast that with the US, where Americans ask, how do we win with the fewest casualties? The Guards commanders are calculating how many regiments can we burn through to stall this threat. War is a numbers game to the Guardsmen. Regiments from Cadia, Catachan jungle fighters, or Vostroyan firstborns, they all embody this, and they show absolutely no mercy. Lives are currency, spent freely in the name of the God Emperor for humanity's survival. That cold calculus is what makes them terrifyingly resilient, but also completely alien to any modern Earth force. The first clashes would be a slaughter, and not in the way you might think. The US military would absolutely dominate the first few days of the war, leveraging what they do best. Superior recon, satellites, drones, special forces sneaking through the brush to paint targets. Coordination would be seamless and networked. Comms would link every unit from grunts to generals. Precision strikes would rain down. JDAMs from F-35s, Hellfire missiles from Apaches, artillery zeroed in with laser precision. Guard formations would get vaporized before they even spotted the enemy. Imagine a whole company of Lehman Russ tanks turned to slag by a single airstrike. Las cannon batteries silenced by counter battery fire they never even saw coming. United States air superiority would own the skies. No Valkyrie dropships getting through without getting a face full of SAMs. The Guards' initial probes would be vaporized. But the massive problem with this is that the Imperial Guard wouldn't be phased at all. They've tangled with far worse. Eldar Farseers who predict every move, Tau battlesuits that outrange and outtech them, Necrons who don't eat, sleep, or die, Chaos Marines twisted by the Dark Gods, endless swarms of war-hungry orcs, and Tyranids that adapt and devour without mercy. Losses like this would be just another Tuesday afternoon. They'd just treat it as intel, adjusting, probing new angles, flooding the battlefield with more bodies. The Guard doesn't quit. Ever. If we wiped out a regiment, 2 more materialize, shattered lines reform, and new fronts open up like weeds. Every decisive US victory just scatters the Guard, forcing Americans to chase ghosts across expanding battlefields. History's full of this type of nightmare for the US. North Vietnam bleeding them dry in the jungles, Iraqi insurgents turning cities into IED mazes, Taliban fighters who vanished into mountains only to resurface years later. But the Guard amps it up to 11. They don't negotiate peace, and they don't have war weariness polls. The US forces might win tactical battles handily, but the Imperial Guard would wear down American resolve and turn the war into a test of wills. Another problem for Uncle Sam would be weapons and artillery. While both sides are on par in terms of firepower, and the United States has more precise weapons, the Guardsmen's arsenal is much more easier to produce and maintain, and that's probably the deciding factor in war. The final nail in the coffin for the United States military is an invisible killer: morale. US soldiers bond like brothers, fighting for the guy next to them, the mission, and getting home to family. But cracks show under pressure. PTSD from endless tours and media scrutiny turning every misstep into a scandal. If a battalion of soldiers are KIA, it's a crisis. Morale plummets army-wide. Democratic warfare means accountability. Generals answer to Congress and presidents answer to voters. But the guardsmen are indoctrinated from birth. Either serve the emperor's will or die. Or even worse, get turned into a servitor. Fear keeps them in line. Commissars execute cowards on the spot. Faith turns death into martyrdom. Dying for the emperor is their duty. The US might win hearts, but the Guard doesn't need them. Their grim approach to war is what lets the Guard outlast foes who value life more. And this war will drag on until the United States military inevitably gets worn down, broken, and finally overrun. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and sub, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't be a stranger.